You're listening to Just a Couple of Jerks with Paul Winstanley. This week's episode, we're chatting with Phil Wilcock from 2 Pint Software. We delve into Phil's past. We learn quite a lot about Phil and things he's done in his life. Things like playing bass for the band Night Shift. Not that you've heard of them, because they never quite made it. But also to being a pig farmer for about 7 years and being a sound engineer. It was great chatting to Phil, and I hope you enjoyed this week's episode.
I listened to the one with Amy earlier today, actually.
Oh yeah. Apologies for mocking you.
Oh no! It's a standing joke, so you know.
Well, you told it. I get desperate Dan thrown at me. So
Yeah. No, I am the Mr. Bean of the network bandwidth management.
it was just a way of getting her through the meetings you're having. Just you can just visualize.
Yeah, she needs something. Bless her.
So, what did you reckon to it? Was it all right?
Yeah, it was good. It flowed really well, actually. Yeah, because at first I thought, well, I don't know if that's really long, but actually, stick it on, and I was working away, and I thought, oh, that's really good, actually.
Yeah. You wanted to hear about Black Eyed Peas, yeah?
Yeah, it's amazing what comes out, isn't it? New Kids on the Block. It was all in there.
Well, that really was about the only question I'd written down.
Yeah,
Was she a fan of them or the Backstreet Boys?
trying to figure out how old she was.
It's pretty sad that I believe that she was 22 at one point.
I know, that was funny. That was one of the funnier
I
bits.
was like, what?
Yeah.
Can't believe it. Yeah. But anyway, Phil Wilcox, thanks for joining me on the Just a Couple of Jerks podcast.
Very welcome.
Yeah. Not saying you're a jerk.
Very kind of you.
The idea, yeah. Yeah. Well, that's why I called it this, because what I'm trying to do is to kind of, we have this thing in the community of people being rock stars. We're put on a pedestal of these experts, and we are experts. We got to that level, or are we? I don't know. But ultimately, we're just regular people struggling our way through IT on a day-to-day basis. So we're just a couple of jerks, yeah.
I get it. Yeah.
Is that all right?
Very true.
Yeah. I'm having to explain it every time. I'll give up now. So thanks for joining me. And Phil, we've known each other for a little while now.
Yeah, a few years now. Yeah.
A few years. And I remember the first time I met you was when I was doing a talk about Raspberry Pi.
I remember it well. I was reminded earlier today when I was listening to Amy's podcast. Yeah.
Yeah. And I know, because I was pretty chuffed that you came through the door and you said, I'm really excited to see this presentation you're doing. I thought, well, wait till you see it. You might not be too excited at the end.
I was excited. Yes, at the start.
Was it the one where we flicked the light on and off?
Yeah.
That's what we did?
Yeah. But you see, to the uninitiated, that might not seem very exciting, but for us IT types, it's like it's a bit of a wow moment. It's how you do it. It's not.
It
It's
was.
not the
I mean,
itself, it's how you achieve it.
Well, when the light turned on, I mean, the room was agog, weren't they? I could hear them all. Wow.
Yeah, the anticipation was palpable. Yeah, it was.
Yeah. And then we turned it off again, and that, the icing on the cake.
Yeah, I like the way you built up to that, and then just drop them, on, then off again.
Yeah.
Like a DJ. It's like a DJ,
Yeah.
build up and then go for the drop. Bang. There it
Oh,
was.
yeah.
Light on, light off.
Yeah. Wax on, wax off.
That's it.
That's probably my favourite presentation. Well, probably the only presentation I've ever done where the demo has actually worked.
Well,
So I was pretty chuffed with it.
Yeah, you did start to get a bit of notoriety for your demos not working. It was unfortunate.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, when we moved to Reactor, I think partly because the network was very unreliable, and a lot of your demos relied on the on the network being there. So
Yeah.
I noticed that you started to kind of preempt things by saying like, "Here's my demo. It's probably not going to work, but we'll give it a go." It's like,
or more
yeah.
like, here's my demo. I've recorded it.
Yes. No, that then you started recording them, which was a great idea because about that time I started doing exactly the same as well because there's absolutely nothing to be ashamed of in recording a demo. It's like at least people see what you want them to see, so it's yeah, it makes complete sense. And demos these days, the way that technology in our space has progressed, it's become more and more complex. It's not like a demo used to be of config manager. It's like, well, we've got some cloud bits now and we need to talk to that and that needs to work and that needs to communicate with that. So a lot of moving parts. So we've found that demos have become ever more complex over time. So yeah, video, it's the future.
It is. Yeah. No, I definitely recommend to anyone to to keep going on that route
Or at
and
least as a backup.
yeah,
If you want to
just
do it live, go for it.
use it as the main thing.
Yeah,
That's my no.
definitely not.
No, well, to be honest, I mean, half the time it's probably my fault. I think the big one was my fault causing it was when I was doing something. I think it was like autopilot based or something like that, and I'd set. I didn't know at the time, but I couldn't get out to the internet. It wasn't liking me do it, and ultimately it was myself that had turned on my DHCP on my lab. So my laptop had grabbed an IP address from the DHCP and then
Yeah,
didn't like the fact that I was trying to get out on the net.
yeah.
And I was like, you tool. When I
That's
got
all
home,
it
I was like, oh my
takes.
God, that was it.
It's all it
Yeah,
takes, you see, something like that, a little misconfiguration. But then, hindsight's a great thing, isn't it? But
yeah.
you're not the
So,
only one who's done it by a long way. I've had some howlers in my time, definitely.
yeah. So, how many presentations have you done then, Phil? Obviously, you do them at the W Mug and you do them
Yeah,
at MMS. And,
yeah.
I love it when you come and do them because it's always an interesting topic.
Thanks. Well, it's difficult to try and keep it interesting because you end up talking about the same things. But yeah, I started a long time ago. Like I think my first MMS, which was 2001, was the first time I did like properly. Um, I mean, before that, um, I'd done presenting to customers and stuff at my time at 1E, but I'd done nothing really of that sort of scale. And that was the first big sort of MMS that I went to in Las Vegas. Um, so that was in at the deep end a bit really because I wasn't supposed to be speaking, and like 3 minutes before it started, it was actually a session by Rod Trent, and he said, "Oh, do you want to get up? I'm a bit short of material. Do you want to get up and do 15 minutes about your stuff?" And so I said, "Okay then," and had to
He
make
dropped him in, he
uh,
dropped you in it a bit then, did he?
yeah, yeah. So I had to make it up on the fly, but it turned out
Oh,
okay
jeez.
actually. It was all right by the skin of my
Oh,
teeth.
we're gonna have Rod on the show actually. He's booked in, so I'll
Oh,
have
great.
to
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
quiz him on that.
Yeah, yeah. I actually have it on DVD somewhere.
Oh, you've got a copy of it.
Yeah, they used to record everything and then send you out a DVD afterwards, so it's knocking around
Oh,
somewhere.
brilliant.
Yeah.
So what was your topic then?
The topic was, oh, it was some command line tools that we did because we were just kind of starting out with 1E at the time, doing on the software side of things. We had some command line tools that we gave away for free. So I just talked about them. I didn't have time to do any demos or anything. I just basically talked about them, and um, it went down quite well because there was we had lots of questions at the end, so people coming up and asking questions and stuff. So it was quite well received. So I was quite pleased, um, but a bit sweaty at the end.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So you kind of chucked into that situation. I mean, when I watch you when you do the sessions, you seem pretty chilled out. It doesn't seem to phase you.
Well, now obviously, the more you do, the easier it gets. You don't sort of I never really got very nervous anyway, because I used to play in bands a lot, and so I got quite used to being in front of people and making an idiot of myself. So it was like I think that prepared me well for speaking in front of IT people. So I really enjoy it as well. I enjoy presenting, and um, so yeah. I mean, it's better obviously if you have a bit of notice and you get a chance to prep for it,
Yeah,
but it's not
yeah.
always the case.
Having said this, and I spoke to Morris about this the other day, the session that I did with Robert Marshall, the last W mug, I didn't have much time to prep it at all, and I was more relaxed for that. Um,
Sometimes that's how it goes. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Maybe
Because
more.
normally I'm bricking it.
Yeah, because you have too much time
Oh,
to worry about it. You know.
yeah, yeah. And like you say, I think you should do more. So I've only really been presenting for probably about 5 years now, actually. But each time I'm like, oh my god, this is rubbish. And now, only now, am I kind of getting over that? I think maybe. So just I have not been in front of uh, an audience of people listening to me play. Well, I have been in front of an audience of people listening to me play music, but only in a pub. And to be honest, I was pretty much backed up by another guy doing it anyway, so I was just at the side. But it's everyone looking at you in it,
Same
and
concept. Yeah, actually, in a pub, it's like they're really close. So, and they've been drinking as well, so it can be tricky.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, definitely. So what you played in bands then? So what's the instrument you play then?
I've played keyboards and guitar and bass over the years. My main instrument is bass. I started out as a bass player when I was about 16, 17, because um, I thought, well, the bass has only got 4 strings, so it's got to be easier to learn. So, and I just wanted to get started as quickly as possible. So I started with that. Then I went graduated to guitar. But like when I was a kid, um, I took piano lessons, so I knew a bit of piano, and I played trumpet in the school band. So I was always a little bit musical. So, yeah, in bands I've played keyboards and guitar and bass over the years.
So you can make your own album then, yeah? You could pretty much,
I could, yeah, the solo effort, yeah, yeah. These days I could just do it on my phone, really, couldn't I?
yeah, yeah, definitely. I mean, what kind of level are you at then? Are you pretty decent? I mean, I'm useless. I picked up a guitar in my 30s. My eldest boy was booked into lessons, and I went along. I said, "Oh, can I learn as well?" And he got bored of it, and so I carried on. So I did it for about, played for about 8 years or so with one-to-one lessons. But
Yeah,
as I got, it's I think as you're older, you're examining it more, aren't you? Kind of, oh, I need to do this, I need to do that, and overthink it maybe.
yeah, I definitely think that's the case. Yeah, I'm actually an advocate of not having lessons and just, well, having enough lessons to get you started, and then going your own way, because then you develop your own style. So, um, but I mean, it's horses for courses. I mean, I'm not of any great standard. I really enjoy it, but for me, it's more of a means to an end because um, my mate Bill, who's a drummer, he calls me a songer. So I'm more of a kind of ideas and songwriting person than a virtuoso guitar player. I've never had the desire to be a fantastic guitarist and do screaming guitar solos. I sort of play guitar so that I can write tunes, really. Um,
Right. So chords are fine. Yeah. Just knock out some chords. Job done. Simple as that. Or should I be really be practicing my scales or?
nah, scales are okay, I suppose. I mean, what scales do is they help you to learn your way around the fretboard. It's more about patterns, really. It's like we once you know the basic patterns, like the blues, you start with the blues, and once you know the patterns of and you it's about finding your way around the frets without thinking about it too much, really. Um,
So knowing what sound you can get from what place on the fret, effectively, yeah.
yeah, knowing what works, what combination of notes work together, and what chords and progressions work together, and just finding just having fun with it, really is the most important thing, definitely. Just
Yeah, I
messing
must
around.
say, with all the lockdowns that are in place, I've picked up the guitar again for the first time in a little while, and I've been listening to there's a band from the '90s called Buffalo Tom, who
Yes, I
that I'm
remember
a big
them. Yeah,
big yeah part of the grunge era, but
that's
weren't
right.
part of that
Yeah,
scene really. And the lead singer, Bill Janovitz, he's doing a happy hour every Saturday because he's bored. He's at home and he's like, oh, I need to do stuff. So he's got about 800 or so people dialing in and watching it.
yeah,
And I messaged him on Twitter this week and said, when you do next week, can you just put your camera slightly lower and we can just copy all the chords you're playing? So I've been learning a few tunes from that, and
good idea.
it's
Yeah,
been yeah, you know what I mean.
yeah,
It's good because you got nothing else to do, so you go okay. I'll pick the guitar up again and I'll play a few tunes. So that it's callus, isn't it, on the fingertips that they're starting to come back again,
yeah,
which is pretty key.
yeah. So my youngest daughter, who's 24, when the whole coronavirus thing kicked off, she was away traveling in Asia. She was in Cambodia, so she's had to come home. So she's living with us at the moment, and she's picked up my guitar and said, "Oh, I fancy learning this." And I just had a look around, and Fender are doing like a 3 month free thing of their guitar app. So she started using that to learn guitar, and
Okay.
yeah, she's complaining of calluses on her fingers now. But it is a great
Yes.
thing to be able to just pick up an instrument. It's great, especially times like this. You know you can kind of lose yourself, and you don't need to think about anything much. Just bang out a few tunes and have a go really.
Exactly. Bit of finger picking as well. Just sit back, do some finger picking,
Yeah, it's very
fill
relaxing.
some time relaxing.
Yeah,
Yeah, exactly. Um, so is that anything you wanted to pursue as a kid? Then you've got your four string bass. It's
yeah,
easy, the easiest one you can learn.
yeah, yeah.
Um, was it actually easy?
It wasn't actually because I am left-handed, so
Oh well,
so
there you go.
so I went to the local music shop and said, "Look, I want to buy a bass, but I'm left-handed." And the owner did a fantastic sales job on me, and he said, "Oh, no, you don't want to play left-handed. You want to play right-handed because then you'll have much more choice of because there aren't many left-handed basses around. There's like, yeah, I could get you one, I could order you one, but we haven't got any. We've got lots of right-handed ones." And actually, what he said made sense. He said, "You're left-handed, so your most dexterous hand is your left hand. So think about it. That's the hand that should be doing the fretwork." And he was actually right. So there was a real uphill kind of learning curve because it felt totally unnatural playing right-handed. My brain was going, "Well, I shouldn't be playing." But then once I got going, I found it really worked. So no, it wasn't particularly easy, but it was all right. And then what I did was I bought this book like Tune a Day, Learn the Bass, which taught was all these like old blues riffs and stuff, and it had a flexi disc with it
Oh God,
to play
yeah,
along with. So I stuck that on the
magic.
record player and played along with that. Um, but um, what I did was to just join a band straight away. So I knew these two guys, there's a guitarist and singer, and a drummer, and I just said, "Oh, can I have a jam along with you one night?" And they said, "Oh yeah, yeah, we're thinking of starting a band." So we just started messing around, and that is the best way to learn. You can't beat it really, playing along with other musicians, because it kind of drives you on to improve yourself. So,
Yeah. So was it like bad news? Was it sort of
oh, it was horrific.
all hair and
Oh,
tantrums?
that first band, it was quite horrific. And I've got a
Was
cassette
it?
demo that we did. I've been putting what one of the other things I've been doing in all this spare time is to put all my cassette demo tapes and rip it into MP3 format so that it's preserved. I don't know why I would want to preserve some of this stuff, but so that was one I found the other day. I didn't even know I still had it, but the band was called Night Shift.
Night shift.
Yeah, because the two other guys worked on the night shift at the local power station. So, um,
Brilliant.
and it was kind of a ska. rock type disaster. Yeah.
Ska rock. I
Yeah,
mean, if you
ska.
were to compare it
A bit like the
to a band we'd
Police.
know,
The Police,
oh, the Police
the
style, yeah,
Clash.
yeah,
Well, yeah, not really. The Clash wouldn't. No, I can't say that. I think that's what I wanted it to sound like, but no, it
yeah,
didn't really.
yeah,
The singer wanted to
yeah.
be Sting, I think. Um, so that was quite hilarious, but um, it was lots of fun. It was loads of fun. We played gigs in pubs all over our local town, and sort of got us on the road to
Built up a bit of a local reputation, sort of thing. Did you? For a
yeah,
bit of a fan base,
a little bit, yeah, yeah, tiny fan base,
tiny.
yeah, but it was good fun. So I learnt a lot from that, and then um, yeah, then played in various other bands, and then decided that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to do music, so
Okay.
I started doing it more seriously after that, and moved to
So where did that lead then?
well, I actually decided that I wanted to um, learn sound engineering, so I moved to London to learn to become a sound engineer. So I did a 3-month course in sound engineering in Brixton. Um, at the age of 21, I moved down to the big city from a little seaside town in the
And
northwest of
whereabouts did
England.
you grow up then,
I
Phil?
grew up in Morecambe by the
In
seaside.
Morecambe, eh?
Yeah, on a farm
Okay.
by the sea, because my family are all farmers. But I decided that so when I left school, I worked for my dad on the farm for 4 years, but then I decided I wanted to do music, so I just went off to London to find fame and fortune on the streets paved with gold. Yeah,
Yeah.
um, yeah, and played in bands there and worked in recording studios and all that kind of stuff. So did that for a few years.
Yeah. That's pretty cool. And so what you were going towards that, and that didn't get fulfilled in a way that you wanted it, or you just moved on to something else, or
Yeah, I mean it was great fun. I was in various bands that when I was down there, and we were gigging a lot and had interest from record companies and stuff, but never quite got that break that we needed. It was really hard in those days because there was no internet. This was like the mid 80s, so there was no internet. You had to do a cassette. You had to do your demo and get a cassette and then hoik it around the record companies. I like go actually knocking on doors um, and sticking stamps on envelopes and sending it off and stuff. So um,
God, yeah, I remember the pain of just trying to apply for jobs around the early '90s, and walking
yeah,
around,
yeah,
sending off letters and things like that,
actual
and
letters with
waiting.
stamps on. Yes, I know.
Yeah, people coming back saying thanks for that. We'll put it in the file,
Yes,
and if we
yeah,
get any jobs, you'll hear from us. And you never heard from them ever again. So I
no,
can imagine you just went through the same pain,
yeah,
effectively.
yeah, because you used to get these things called rejection slips. So you send off your demo tape to the record company, and then you get it back with a rejection slip saying saying thanks for that. Yeah, it's not quite doesn't your style doesn't really. Yeah, they had many ways of telling you the same thing. Basically, we didn't like it. Sometimes you wondered if they'd even listen to it at all. We used to leave the cassette in a very specific place on the spool so that we'd know if they'd actually put it in the machine and played it. Um, and sometimes it came back and it hadn't moved at all. So it was like, yeah,
Oh,
you could tell they hadn't
yeah,
even bothered.
cheeky.
Yeah.
And I suppose the world had moved on from the Clash and Police a little bit at that point.
Oh
The
yeah,
kind of
by
you're
then,
talking Duran and Wham at
by the
that
mid
point, are you?
'80s, the MTV thing was obviously massive, and you had to, almost have a video and an image before you got anywhere in those days as well, which was ridiculous. Um,
So lots of standing around with your mates looking a bit moody.
looking moody. I've got lots of photographs of myself in various bands looking moody with bad hair. So yeah, there was a lot of
Surprised
that.
you weren't signed up. That was all you needed, really. Didn't need any
Well,
talent.
that's what we thought, but apparently not.
Yeah,
Yeah,
didn't
so
work.
didn't work out. So I gave that up eventually. But I mean, that what it did do was because I was working in the studios quite a lot, it gave me my first brush with technology because
Right.
in those days, things were starting to become digital. It was moving on from sort of analog, everything being analog, and going to digital and sampling and computers. And so that gave me my first kind of interest in technology, which led down this rocky road.
So so what would have been that intro then? Obviously, like you say, you're moving away from all that analog stuff. So the digital side would be just the editing side, would it? Or
The digital side was more on the sampling and programming side. So it was like things like the Fairlight sampler were coming. I mean, they were incredibly expensive, but you came across them in studios now and again. And you almost needed a degree to operate them. They were very technical, didn't work very well a lot of the time. So there was a lot of kind of trying to get things to work and figuring things out. Um, the the earliest kind of musical programs were run on the old Apple, like the early Apple computers. Um,
right, right. I know the because I had an Amiga around that time.
yeah, so it was a little bit before that. Um, there really wasn't much at all. What there was hugely expensive, so um, it was just a case of like fiddling around with technology in whatever form. Sometimes it was like there was a keyboard called the emulator, which was the first kind of slightly cheaper sampler, which had a floppy disk and a really terrible interface built into the console of the keyboard itself, and so there was a lot of key pressing to do really, really basic stuff, but it did give me an interest in technology and how it all works. And then um, sort of moved on from that, and I just decided at some point to actually go back to college and to study IT and actually find out what these computers really do. I still don't know, but I mean,
Yeah, yeah.
that was the idea.
So yeah, it's quite a shift, isn't it? Really, I suppose in doing that, it's interesting to see how these things were kind of made. I mean, it really was primitive kit, isn't it? You compare it to stuff today, and I was reading some stuff about. You remember Carter, the Unstoppable Sex Machine?
Yes, yeah,
Yeah, so I'm a big fan of theirs, and back in the day, they had lots of samples on the records, and obviously it's two guys with guitars and a drum machine and a sample machine, effectively.
yeah,
And I always thought they had like access to all this stuff to get the sound samples, and from reading about them, they were just pressing record in front of the TV, kind of, and recording stuff directly off it.
yes. There was a lot of bands were doing that at that time, just going around with a microphone and recording stuff and sampling it and playing it backwards and chopping it up. And it was good in a way because it forced you to be quite creative. Um, like now it's super easy to you can just download whole libraries of samples of anything you can imagine, which in a way there's almost too much choice. You can sound very polished very easily, but you still got to have that creativity, and I think and there's still obviously people pushing boundaries of how technology is used in music, but certainly if you go back 20, 30 years, it was like the Wild West, really.
Yeah, and it's not that long ago, really. Well, it's not for us anyway, is it?
Not for us.
It's,
No.
for some people, it may be. So yeah, you went out of this shift into IT then. So what was it that you went and studied then?
Oh, I just did like an H&D in computer studies. Basically, it was very broad. But I just wanted to kind of get a bit of a grounding. It was just a 2-year diploma. It wasn't a degree course or anything. It was just a college course. And at the end of that, um, there was work experience. And out of that, I got my first job. I did a 6-week work experience, and then I got my first job working for this company called Northern Computing. near, near,
So you
near.
weren't in London then at this point,
No,
no?
I was back north then. This was near Preston, and they were a bunch of cowboys basically who were uh, selling Novell NetWare to. implementations to small companies. So, but they were selling the same copy of NetWare to every company they came
God.
to. So yes, it was very, very dodgy indeed.
I was going to put a disclaimer in there for that,
Yeah,
but maybe not now, based on what you're telling me.
yeah, they don't exist anymore, so I'm not going to get sued or anything, so it's fine. But yeah, so the dodgy beginnings, definitely. But that sort of got my first proper introduction to networking, and um, that I sort of from there. I mean, also at the same time, I started doing a little bit of programming with Microsoft Access. The other thing that they did was to do little databases for customers, for like dentists and vets and things like that. So we used to bang out these little databases in Microsoft Access. So um,
Lovely.
yeah, and it just went from there really. Sort of job after job, and moved on, and then I ended up eventually working at Microsoft, which I suppose was um, the big break really career-wise, because that was a huge leap for me. I was really surprised when I got that job, but yeah, it was a good experience. That was about 1997,
I was
six or
going to say,
seven.
was this
Yeah.
kind of around early 90s Northern Computing, sort of 92,
Yeah, the early
93?
mid 90s really that was. 93, 94, and then a few other jobs along the way. I was network manager for a while at a company that had a big cow database. That was interesting.
Yeah, I sort of read that on your on the 2 Pint
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
biog.
That was good.
Move something, was that?
It was a it was actually part of the government at the time. It was called National Milk Records. It was part of the old Milk Marketing Board. They send people out onto farms to test the milk quality. So it comes back, it gets analysed, and then because the farmer gets paid on the quality, and it all goes into this big database of cows that goes back to about 1968. Um,
Was your dad going, oh, I knew you wouldn't be able to escape the farming world, and
yes, he said,
welcome back,
"Oh, how ironic!
proud of
You
your
ended up
son?
there." Yeah. And by the way, could you hack the database and change my results? So yeah, no, but no, sadly I couldn't, because it
Ah,
was a SQL database and I didn't know SQL at the time.
right.
So that was good fun
Too,
though.
too busy on access.
I was no, I'd moved on. I was the network manager there actually, bizarrely. So I was in charge of all of these Cisco routers and connections to all of their branch offices and stuff. So that was a bit of an education in like networking at the packet level and Cisco and command line stuff. And,
So
um,
when you moved up to Microsoft then, so what was the role there? Was that
yeah,
around networking?
no, it wasn't because after that I moved on to sort of the server side of things. NT was just appeared basically. NT 3.1, 3.5, 351, all these early dodgy copies of Windows NT. Um, so I actually got a job in PSS in Microsoft supporting NT and various other technologies, SMS as it was called then.
Oh yeah,
Um,
heard of
so
that.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So that's where I came across the whole systems management side of things and started to learn about that really.
So at this stage, are you working down in Reading at that
That
point?
was
Are you,
right.
or
Yeah, I
have
was at
you?
that was Winnersh, not the site in Reading that they are now. That was in Winnersh, and I'd moved to Bath. I was living in Bath for 7 years. So yes, I moved back down south, but southwest. So
Is that kind of? Are you can moving around a fair bit? Is that just? Are you moving for jobs or
yeah, I'm a bit
personal
nomadic.
reasons?
I'm a bit nomadic actually. I think I always have been. Yeah, I always get itchy feet. So I
Or
just
just looking for different scenery or?
yeah, different scenery, different parts of the country. I like exploring different parts of the country, different countries as well. It gets you broadens the mind, I find.
Definitely,
Yeah.
yes. There's lots of people who, sort of live around where I live here who've never stepped out of London, and you think, well, I mean, now they can't. Obviously, they can't
No,
step out of
not
the
right
bloody
now.
house, but
No, no.
no, not ideal. But they wouldn't know anywhere north of, Brent Cross or whatever.
Yes, I think that's true of anywhere there's people from my hometown, that people that I went to school with, they're still there, and they're very happy doing what they're doing. They've done the same job for 30, 40 years, So it's different. It's horses for courses. I've just always had an urge to see places that I've never been before. So
Yeah, were you kind of as a kid though? Were you kind of going, teenage years to 18ish or whatever, going, "Get me out of Morecambe, I've had enough,"
yes,
or is that
yeah.
how is that what you were thinking at the
Oh
time?
yeah,
I just
yeah,
love
yeah,
to.
yeah. But you think, this is a terrible place. I can't wait to leave, kind of thing. And then, years later when I went back, I thought, oh, actually, it's really nice here. And I think you sometimes you have to go away from a place to and then come back to it to appreciate it. It's it's strange.
I'm the same. So I grew up in Barnsley, as you know,
Yes,
which is in Yorkshire, it's in the north of England. For
wrong
any,
side of the Pennines, but I won't hold that
yeah,
against you.
no,
Yeah.
yeah, for anyone who's listening, who doesn't know where that is, anyone who's listening, if anyone is. But yeah, but ultimately, yeah, same as you. I was at 18. I was like 18, 19. I thought I've got to leave. There's nothing here for me. Um, I've done everything,
Yeah.
and then moved away.
Yeah.
And then now I go back. My mum still lives up there. My brother,
Yeah.
and I appreciate it when I go back.
Yes, I bet you
And
do. Yeah.
we were right on the edge of the Peak District,
Yeah.
and the scenery is fantastic. I go cycling in London. I'm like, I want to get out into the countryside, and I had that right on my doorstep, where I grew up. Obviously, it's a little bit hillier, so I did
Slightly.
less of the
Yeah.
cycling there. Yeah. So you went and back and lived in Morecambe for a bit, did you?
Well, I did eventually, but not until quite recently. That's when I went back to farming briefly
Okay.
in the mid
So
2000s.
what? Okay. So you done a stint at MS. You did
Yeah.
some stuff with 1E. We'll touch on that in a bit. But
Yeah.
but you went what? Did you sack it all off and decide? Okay, I'm going to do some farming again.
Yeah. 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 So mid 2000s, 2005, 2000. Yeah, 2005 basically. Um, my my mate Chris, who's actually uh, who I know from Morecambe, but is from Grassington actually, in Yorkshire. So he was working in technology. He was selling electronic components down south, but he grew up on a farm as well. Uh, and I was flogging my guts out at 1E and not being very happy. And so um, we both started chatting about doing something different. So the first idea that we had was to farm bison, actually. Um, but then we found out that they're quite violent and they need a lot of special handling equipment. So we thought maybe not bison. Um, so the second idea that we had that we ended up doing was, well, let's farm free range pigs. So we did that instead. And in order to do that, I mean, my family still owned the farm up near Morecambe. My uncle was kind of still living there, but not really running it. He was just renting out the land because he was in his 70s. And we sort of said, well, can we rent some land off you and have a bit of a go? And he said, yeah, yeah. So we did that. So my friend and I up sticks and moved back up to Morecambe and started a free range pig farm. And, and of course, obviously, we producing all of this pork, so we had to sell it. So we took over a butcher's shop as well and learned how to do all the butchery and all the rest of it. So it was real kind of field to fork kind of thing. We were doing farming um, and selling it in the butcher's shop and farmers markets and all that kind of stuff. So it was
That's pretty cool. I mean, there's one point. Well, I can imagine it is. I mean, it's not a job that kind of has set hours, is it really? From
No.
what I've seen, I don't really know much about it, but I've watched some programs about farming. And I mean, going back to your butcher's shop, there's one point, um, God, when was it? Oh, it would be, well, I should know actually, about 15 years ago when I was actually thinking, I'm so bored of IT. I might, what should I do? And at one point I thought, shall I become a butcher? I don't know why,
Why not?
but why not? It was like, this is more interesting to me at that moment in time. And my wife is giving birth to my third son, and I'm there with Hugh Fernley Whittingstall's meat book, reading through all the different cuts,
Yeah.
showing her these pictures of offal. I mean, it's the last thing she needed to see while
Yeah.
she's contracting. Have
Potentially.
checked this potentially, and but I was interested in it at the time. I never pursued it, but it just seemed quite interesting and
Oh,
quite different.
it's fascinating. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I've got that book as well. Yeah. It's a great book. Um,
Yeah,
we ended up making most of the things in that book
right.
just because we were interested in it.
I mean,
And
I've forgotten it all by now, so
yeah.
I know don't know where any of the cuts come from, but to me, it just seemed okay. This would be quite cool, but I can't imagine I'm going to get much money out of this. So to kind of drop everything I'm doing now in IT and take this up as a career, as a butcher, probably wouldn't sustain the
Nah,
family.
there's a lot of money in it. Just even owning your own shop, it's really, really long hours and it's very hard work, which you don't mind, but um, very tight margins these days, certainly, unless you specialize, I think. The butchers that are still going are ones that have specialized in the higher end quality side of things. Because obviously the supermarkets have it sewn up on price. You can't compete on price, so you have to do different things. So I took myself off to um, Tuscany to learn how to make salami and how to cure hams. So I learnt from these Italian butchers that still do things very, very old-fashioned way, um, to try and make something that differentiates you from other butchers because everyone's making these types of sausages and this types of cuts of meat and stuff. So it's all about trying to differentiate yourself, trying different cuts of meat, different methods of making sausages, curing salamis, hams, all that kind of stuff. So that it was fascinating. It's a whole other world out there. Food production is
I tell you what, you live in my dream, Phil, because butcher, guitarist, you've done it all.
he's
I've
talking
just
me.
dreamt about it. Bloody
Yeah,
hell! So I mean, that's the thing though. You go to so many butchers, and it's like, oh, they've got the cups out, they've got the awards,
yeah,
and you think, well, what do these mean?
not
Because it's
much.
great that you've got them,
Yeah.
but what who awarded that
A
to
lot of
you?
the time, a lot of the awards that you see in these butchers' shops are a bit meaningless because a lot of them are handed out by suppliers, and they sort of go, "Whoa, whose turn is it to win it this year? Who's spent the most with us this year? Oh, this guy here." So yeah, I mean, there are some awards. The Good Food Awards, probably the best ones, really. The little black stickers that you see on produce in the UK. You get the stars, the star system. You get the bronze, silver, and gold awards. That's probably the fairest award system, I would say.
So
Uh,
you're doing this shop, but
yeah.
you're also farming as well. So you're doing
Yes.
both at the same time. So that you must have just been knackered.
Yeah. Pretty
You must
much.
have like,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. So you start.
completely full time, 7 days a week.
Yeah. Start at like 5 in the morning before it's even daylight. You've got to go out and feed the pigs and do the sort of daily rounds and stuff, and then got to open up the shop and then close the shop at the end of the day, and then you've got more farming to do. So, I mean, if there has to be obviously a few of you. There was myself and my friend Chris, and then there was two. We had two full-time employees as well, helping out on the farm, and with the butchery, we had a full-time butcher as well. but it was still a huge amount of work. Um, but it was probably the most rewarding thing I've ever done because you can't beat the feeling of actually producing food that you've actually produced from nothing, producing it right through to the end product, and then having people buy that from you and then come back and say, "Oh, that was really great. That was really amazing food. Our Christmas dinner was
Probably saying
fantastic."
that's the best kind of cut they've ever had, or something like that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and that gives you a really nice feeling because food's very important, obviously, in people's lives, and if you can do something a bit special, then it is very rewarding.
Yeah,
Um,
and totally traceable from what you're selling. You're selling your own
yeah, and
produce, effectively.
people liked it because they could drive past the farm and see the pigs from the road, and they could drive up to the farm and talk to us and stuff, and then come to the shop, and they knew that there was no factory processing in the middle. They knew, exactly how the livestock was reared and how it was produced, and they knew that everything that they spent went back into the farm and therefore into the local community, as opposed to into a supermarket that was paying its shareholders. So, um, and we used to do things like um, we used to pick up all the waste from local supermarkets. So all the stuff that they were throwing away, we used to go around and pick it up. We used to take the trailer around and pick it up and feed it to the pigs.
Yeah,
No, recycling in a big way.
yeah,
It's hilarious.
brilliant.
We used to get things like we'd go around and we go, "What have you got today?" He goes, "Well, I've got 20 birthday cakes that are out of date." It's okay, bring it on.
Well, have them.
Pigs like birthday cakes as much as the next guy,
Yeah.
you know.
See, I'll take that one for myself. Pigs can
Yeah.
have them. Yeah.
Well, there was an element of that. I did put a few pounds on at that point. Yeah.
Yeah, not just the cakes, but eating the pigs as well, I suppose. Yeah.
Yes, we did dine very well those years.
Yeah.
Yes.
So was it a completely different type of farming to what your dad did then?
Yeah. So
Was
my
he different animals?
growing up, it was a dairy farm. It was a very traditional, conventional dairy farm, quite small, but yeah, it was dairy with a few beef cattle and sheep, so a traditional mixed farm, really. Um, but yes, very, very traditional. Nothing special about it, really. Um, but the problem with that is you can't really do that on a small scale these days. All the farms, like where I grew up, we counted up that when I was a kid, there were about 17 farms in that area. And when I went back there in 2006, there were seven because all the smaller farms had to pack up and they were bought up by the bigger farms. So the bigger farms get bigger and bigger and bigger, and the smaller farms go out of business because you can't have the economy of scale. So we couldn't have gone back and done the same that my dad did. We couldn't have been a dairy farm because we would just wouldn't have stood a chance really
Just getting
on that
squeezed as well
scale.
by the supermarkets. Yeah.
Yeah, so you can't you have to differentiate yourself and do something different.
Yeah. I feel one thing that I've done as part of this lockdown we have is that I'm now getting milk delivered from a dairy,
Yes,
and
yeah,
it costs more because they can't have the same margins, can they, as the
that's right.
supermarkets,
Yeah,
and the supermarkets are squeezed and squeezed and squeezed. So therefore the dairies, they can't operate,
yeah,
um,
yeah,
and it's a real shame. So when it comes to farming the pigs, then so you're having to look after the animals. So you're going through that whole process of
yes.
helping them birth, and then you're going to get them slaughtered as well. So what's the attachment
Yeah,
like
yeah.
to the animals?
Well, if you've grown up on a farm, that you don't really get that. It's like, there you obviously care for your livestock for a great deal, but you understand that at the end of the day, they have to go off and become sausages or whatever, so you don't get
Mm-hmm.
that attachment. I mean, I mean, there's no other way of putting it, really. It's like
Yeah,
they are cute as anything. Pigs are amazing and intelligent, really intelligent, but the end of the day, they've got to go. So there's no kind of, heart-wrenching emotional. I mean, yes, we reared them from birth up to the point where we put them in a trailer, drive them to the slaughterhouse, um, and watch them go through. And to take it to its extreme, start making black puddings. So you put them in one end and you come out the other, and you literally have to stand there with a bucket and catch the blood. So if you haven't got the stomach for that, then you can't do it really. And I think that anyone that eats meat should really, you know, get a bit more insight into what they're actually eating in those little packages you pick off the supermarket shelves.
But this is the thing, isn't it? Because it's so sanitized, isn't it?
Yeah, we're completely distanced from the stuff that we eat. It's not just meat; it's everything that we eat. We're completely, separate from the food production to such an extent that we don't really recognize it for what it is. It's just food that we go to the supermarket and we throw the same things in our trolley every week, and we go home and we cook it, but we don't really give much thought to where it's come from and what kind of a life it's had and what kind of a death it's had as well, because we made a big point of um, making sure that our pigs went to an abattoir that was small and was very ethical in terms of the way that animals were killed, because there is, more than one way to do this. Obviously, if you're doing things on a massive scale, it's not very nice. And obviously, death isn't very nice anyway. But if you raised an animal from scratch, you want it to have at least the most dignified death possible. So literally, they kind of walk in, they don't know where they're going, and then bang, they're gone. That's it. So
And next they're being forced through a mincing machine,
yes, indeed. So then
effectively, yeah.
then you pick them up and you take them back and turn them into amazing food. So
Yeah, yeah. I always remember a friend of mine, his dad was a farmer, and he always used to tell me about they'd be having Sunday lunch or whatever, and they'd look out the window and his dad would point out and go, "See Daisy over there? It'll be on the table next week."
yeah,
So it's like,
well, it's a bit like that. Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah. I mean, every time you look at an animal, you think, yeah, you're nearly ready, or not, whatever. But yeah, you've always got that eye. So yeah,
yeah.
it's
Be
next
careful
week.
which animals you're looking at
Could be
when
days.
you're doing that.
Yes, I do have to rein myself in a bit. Yeah,
Yeah. So, how long did you do that for then?
I did
Was it
that
a couple of years?
for 7 years altogether.
Oh wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
2013, I packed it in eventually just because it was just so much work. My friend Chris basically decided he'd had enough and he went back down south to sell electronics again. He'd had enough. So
Yeah.
I carried on a little bit longer and did it on my own for a while on a small scale, which was good fun. But it just wasn't sustainable because I had two daughters at the time, and they were interested in farming. And farming's very much a thing that works if you've got the family involved and you've got someone like the next generation to pass it on to, and you can think about passing it on. But I didn't have that, so it kind of came to a natural end. Um, and so I sort of, yeah, took a bit of time off and sold most of the farm and the business and everything, got rid of all that, and took a bit of time to try and figure out what to do next. Um, and that's when Andreas popped up and said, "Hey, do you want a job?" So
Okay. Let's step back a bit then. So you were at MS, and then you went to. Did you start at 1E? You're a co-founder of
yeah,
1E.
so the the way that 1E started was that myself and Samir and Mark Blackburn, the three co-founders, were working together at PSS in Microsoft. There were actually four co-founders. There was another guy called Danny, and we all left Microsoft to form 1E. Danny lasted about 6 weeks, after which we bought him out because it just wasn't working out.
Right.
And then we sort of carried on from there. So because And the reason it came about was that while we were working at PSS, we realized that a lot of their corporate customers didn't have a lot of resource in terms of troubleshooting stuff or consulting or just generally knowing the way around um, Windows NT as it was at the time implementations. There were lots of banks and large customers have these mass migration projects over to this amazing new technology, Windows NT, whole world of Windows going away from mainframes. And so we saw a niche where we could help out these companies, and that's how 1E started. So we started out as a consultancy, um, and it wasn't really until a couple of years later that 1E started to do a bit of software development and actually turned into more of a product company.
So was that Nomad then, or was?
Yeah, that was one of it wasn't the first, it was one of the first though. So we had this Wake on LAN product called SMS Wake Up, which was kind of the first commercial offering. We did some free tools first that we gave away and sort of little command line stuff. Um, but that was the first kind of add-on that we did for SMS. So we did all of these SMS add-ons, the Wake on LAN. Nomad came about from um, really an issue around software distribution to laptops. So more and more laptops were starting to be used, but the problem was that a lot of people, I mean, in those days, were all connecting over dial-up back to the corporate network, and if you started a download, there was no bandwidth throttling, but also there was no um, ability to restart a download. If you shut the laptop and went somewhere else, it didn't restart. You had to start again from scratch. So Nomad was all about dealing with roaming laptops, um, and it kind of developed from there. Initially, there was no peer-to-peer um, component to Nomad. It was just a pure download solution for laptops. But the peer-to-peer um, kind of aspect came about from a conversation in a pub between me and our first developer that we hired, a guy called Mick Saxton, who we were talking about Napster. You remember Napster?
I do remember Napster,
Yeah,
and
the old music sharing.
yeah. So I hardly prepped anything for this as I normally do, um, and that was one of the questions I had for you. What was your favourite peer-to-peer P2P solution?
Ah, yes. Well, Napster was probably the first big one, that was widely known. What else? I used to use something called LimeWire. I
Oh
think
yeah.
that was another one. Um, but we were talking in the pub, this Mick and I, and
Mm,
he said to me, "Oh, wouldn't it be great if SMS was more like Napster?" And that was like a light bulb moment. It was like
mm,
we looked at each other and went, "Yes, it would, wouldn't it?" So,
mm.
uh, yeah, so we thought, "Wow, well, yeah, why restrict the file sharing peer-to-peer sort of thing? Why restrict that to the retail world and music sharing when we could do that in the corporate world?" So that's how the Nomad that people know today, that's how it came about.
From a conversation in the pub.
Yes, as most good ideas do. Yes.
Yeah, yeah, and hence two pint as well.
Well, the name
The
Two Pint.
philosophy of two
Yeah,
pint.
that's where the name comes from. So where you see, Andreas is the co-founder of Two Pint. Obviously, I hired him at 1E, so he worked for 1E initially, and we used to have many meetings in the pub and throw ideas around, and we started to classify them into good or bad ideas. So like the ideas that you have after 2 pints, we figured out were the best. because after that it gets a little bit silly. So,
Bit
a
sloppy,
bit
bit
sloppy,
messy.
a bit
Yeah.
more sort of, or less feasible, shall we say, because your imagination
Yeah.
starts to run away with you a little bit uh, as the pints accumulate.
Keep
So
flowing. Yeah.
yes, so yeah, 2 pint is the sweet spot really. You have 2 pints, have a conversation, have an idea, and think yes, that could work.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes,
That's great.
yeah,
So you obviously you knew Andres. You'd worked with him at One E, so he
yeah.
comes to you. You finish your farming, and you've had a bit of downtime. And he says, "Oh, would you like to do
He
something?" Is that
said,
how it kind of
yeah,
got going?
he said, would you like to work for me? Because he was working in Gothenburg in Sweden. He'd gone back to Sweden and he was working for a company called Atea, a big company in the Nordics. And he was running a team of 35 developers doing systems management stuff. And so he said, do you want to come and work for me, do some consultancy? So I said, no, actually, the first time he
No,
asked me.
I've worked with you long enough. I don't want to do it
Yeah,
again.
so
Yeah, once was enough. Yeah.
yes, no, yeah, it was no, it was more a case of I had this vision of um, doing more stuff around music, around specifically around composing music for films and television because I'd always really loved film music. One of my big kind of passions was like soundtracks and film music, and I wanted to get into that. And I looked into it and did a bit of study and stuff around that. Um, so I said no the first time he asked me, but then he asked me again, and I said yes. So because I thought, well, I could always do both. Foolishly, I thought, well, it'd be good to get back into a bit of consultancy, get a bit of money coming in, and get my eye back in the game. So I said, yeah, yeah, I'll do a bit for you, but I can't promise anything.
Yeah.
uh, and
Were you on the fourth pint at that
I
that
think I
point?
may have been. There may have been,
Yeah.
yeah, some imbibement there. But so I did some work for him, and it went pretty well. And we went to um, the last kind of Microsoft MMS in Vegas in 2013, and I think it was there that we kind of decided that we might want to try doing our own thing and forming 2 Pint Software. So we kind of kicked off, I think in 2014 was when we started out properly. We just like did tons of research first. We didn't really do anything for the first sort of 6 months. We kicked off properly in about 2014, I think.
Yeah, and you seem to be doing pretty well with the things that you're providing. You start off. Did you start off just doing the branch cache stuff? So there's Stifle R.
Yeah, again, we started off doing some free stuff just to see what the reaction was, and so we did some reporting around We what we decided was, and the sort of ethos of 2 Pints still is that we like to work with technologies that we think are really cool, but are very unloved and overlooked. And there's a lot of it out there, there's a lot of stuff. Actually, most of the stuff that we really like came in Vista, which everyone hated. But actually, under the hood, it had some really cool technologies, like it was the first version of branch cache and all that kind of stuff. So um, we looked at branch cache and the APIs and what it could do and what it couldn't do, and we were quite impressed and quite surprised that no one was using it. Um, so we did some free tools, some free stuff, some reporting around bits and branch cache, because what in our research we found that it was really hard to actually get anything out of it. We didn't know if it was working or not working. So it was our own frustrations that led to that, and we did some free stuff, and then that got a little bit of a slight ripple of interest. So we thought, oh, there might be some legs on this, and so we persevered, and then I think a year or two later, the first version of Stifler or Stifler, depending on how you pronounce it, came out. Um, which was all based around Microsoft technologies, and it's kind of developed from there really. So we're still doing the same thing we've been doing for the last 20 years really, which is trying to install Windows on a computer without messing up the network. So
Yeah, that's nicely put. I think through your community work that you do, the promotion that you do, you've put people onto these things. I mean, I would say yourselves are a good source of that information. So, implement branch cache. I know Mike Tyrrell's always saying, turn it on, turn it on. And these technologies that
yeah,
weren't being loved, I mean, I've turned it on at places and it's great. But, you were next up, you were kind of going, okay, now we've got lead bats. Who knows about lead bat? And I'm thinking, I've never heard of this thing. And, that you're promoting that, and next thing we know, we have this built into config manager, and we can use it. And is that partly you're pushing that, but you're having conversations with the product group as
yeah,
well
very
around
much
that?
so. Yeah, yeah. I mean, we discovered Leadbat by accident, um, and Microsoft weren't really shouting about it at all. And we thought, oh, this is fantastic technology. Apparently, it's great. It's like, why is no one talking about this? So we we did a lot of work with the Windows networking team to because they were interested in use cases for it. They really liked the technology, but they were a bunch of geeks basically, as were we. And so we started talking to them and bouncing ideas around. And we said, look, there's customers out there installing all of these patches. Um, Patch Tuesday and flooding their network, and Leadback could really help with that. And they went, oh yeah, I guess you're right, it could. Um, But you see, they work.
So were Microsoft using it at all then,
No,
or was
no,
it right?
absolutely
Okay.
not. No. So this was very much under the radar. So the Windows networking team are incredibly talented people. I mean, like the program manager, he has a PhD and he's one of the cleverest people you will come across. But they operate at the packet level. So they know that world very well. But above that level, where we kind of live in the config manager world, they just don't really have any. That's not even on their radar. So what we did was to put the two worlds together. So I went to David James and Kerwin one day at MMS and said, "Hey guys, have you got any plans to implement Leadbat in config manager?" And they said, "What's that?" I said, well, it's this technology that Microsoft has. And they went, oh, okay. So it was us pushing to these two teams together. But Microsoft's so big, these things are not going to happen on their own. Things could have just developed along and nothing could have happened. So we pushed them together, um, and got the conversation going for them, and it's worked really well. As you know, Leadbat is now hugely successful. Everybody's happy. It's really easy to implement. But um, for us, it made complete sense because it totally complements what we do and it makes our story even stronger, if you will. Because one of the golden rules of Two Pint is we never compete with whatever Microsoft are doing. We try and complement it. And this is something that complements what we do. We were never going to do Leadbat, it's just way beyond us. So it's great for us, but it's also great for the community because it gives you an extra string to your bow in the kind of bandwidth management space. So, and that's what we do, really. We kind of talk to the right people, put the right people together. It helps us, you know, we help them, they help us, kind of thing. It's a very symbiotic relationship. And the same goes for the community as well. I mean, we would be nowhere, we'd be nothing without the community because you need that feedback. You need that, um, you need that level of engagement from the community because the space that we work in, it's completely community driven. I think it's very unique in that respect. Um, and without the buy-in from the community, then it's really, really hard because then you're just another vendor sat on the sidelines trying to push your wares. And so, unless you engage with the community, you're not going to get very far. But also, we felt that we kind of owed it as well because we've taken so much from the community over the years. As you know, if you come into this as a newbie, the 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 systems management community is so welcoming, and it's such a great place to learn that it would be really churlish of us not to pay back some of that, if you see what I mean.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think, I was chatting about with Harjit about this, how, go onto Twitter and there's so much bad vibes and stuff going on out there, but then you go into the community that we're in and no one's like that. Everyone seems to be helping each other out, and that's refreshing.
It is, yeah.
And I know I've had personal experience of asking yourselves questions. I've asked Andres questions, I've asked you questions about things, and I've worked with your product, and I think I even managed to find a bug one engagement.
Never.
So yeah, but messaged Andres, and he was okay. This is interesting. What is it you're doing? But the great thing was that you had this rapport, this feedback, and obviously you go through the motions of um, I didn't. I sidestepped it because I had Andreas's email, and he was quite cool at emailing me back. But you go through the process of logging a call with you or whatever to get the things going. But he was like, oh, okay, now right, what are you doing? Can you send me these logs? And he was on it straight away. And okay, here's a new exit. Test this out. And it was great. It was lovely the way that he was working, and I think that was fantastic. You could see that he was keen to fix it as well. And I think he was even on a holiday during part of that when I was emailing him.
Quite possibly,
So,
yeah.
but yeah, but it's the enthusiasm, it's the passion, is what I'm trying to say from Andres to come back and do that. And even when I ask you questions, I'm asking you simple, basic questions, and you go, okay, set that. That should be this. That should be that. And this will work for you, and this is why. And it's brilliant. And I love the way that the solutions that you have, and the way that, and I love the way that you are out there in the community. And I think that makes a big difference. And the one thing I was going to ask you about was because you're obviously MMS, you do that every year. You have these beer things, and now I don't know anything about them, but I'm not going to be at MMS now in July if it happens.
Well,
I've
we don't
had to
know
pull
if
out.
any of us are. Yeah,
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 so I've had to pull out of that.
yeah.
But so I was looking forward to the beer thing. Now, what is it? It's just basically going out and getting drunk, is it?
Pretty much, yes. It's upholding a long tradition, I think, of just going out and drinking and having fun. But yeah, it started about 3 years ago, I think, for us. We wanted, because we were still quite small, and we wanted some way of, you know, excuse me, helping out with sponsoring the event in some way, putting something in there. So um, Brian Mason came to us and said, "Well, do you want to sponsor the beer tour?" So we said, "Well, yep, I think that's got our name all over it." So um,
Perfect. Yeah.
what we do is we get a bus full of people and we drive them around to several craft breweries in the Minneapolis area, and we sample their wares, and we have a hoot on the bus. There's lots of beer on the bus and stuff, and it usually coincides with the opening reception. So what we do is we take people out, get them drunk, we tip them out of the bus and push them into the evening reception to cause trouble. Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Oh, that could have got quite nasty. The fact
No,
that
it's the thing
probably
is, it never gets nasty. People fall asleep. That's the worst that can happen. You know,
I'd be up
or
every
get
5
lost.
seconds. Nip into the loo.
I don't think we've lost anybody yet, but that was my big fear is that we're very diligent about counting people back onto the bus.
Oh, you're doing the old school teacher head
Yeah,
count, are you,
yeah.
down the bus?
Put your hand in the air. Come on,
Brilliant.
follow me, children. This way, this way. Yeah.
and that seems quite popular because they get booked up, and I was like looking forward to that.
Gets booked
So
up incredibly quickly. Yeah, it's great fun. Yeah,
so hopefully, like I say, I'm not going to be making it in July.
that's a shame. Yeah, it would have been good to see there, but I mean, obviously, there's a question mark over everything at the moment. We have to see. So we just have to wait and see.
We're not even allowed in the country at the minute, are we?
At the
So
moment, no, us mere Europeans are not allowed in the country. No.
yeah, yeah. So I've messaged and said, I'm really sorry. Hopefully, maybe put something through for next year or even October or I think the fall one or whatever. We'll see how it goes, but I'm a bit gutted about that.
Yeah, I
And
think
it's
everyone is. I think
yeah,
um, if
it's only 2 or 3 weeks away, wasn't it,
it
from
was,
now?
yeah,
So
I mean, it wasn't. It was just unfortunate the timing of it. I mean, we'll see what happens with the event in. Uh, is it October? There's another one. But I'm obviously we
the
just don't
fall
know.
one, yeah,
Yeah, we just don't know. So we'll have to wait and see. I think if this year doesn't go ahead, then next year will just be bigger and better for sure. Hope so anyway.
absolutely, definitely. Phil, I think it's been a real treat having a chat with you. I've
Been a
really
pleasure,
enjoyed
Paul.
it.
Yeah.
I've loved finding out more about what you've been up to, and I've read these things on your bio, and I thought, farmer, that's interesting.
Yeah, you do wonder if
Um,
it's made up or not, don't you?
I did. I was thinking, yeah, farmer, but it's great that you did it, and like I say, you've lived out my dream.
It's never too
It's
late, Paul. It's never too late. If
never
you ever
too
want
late.
any
Never
tips
too
on
late.
sausage making, do you know what? Actually, it's really not that expensive and it's quite easy to get started making sausages and bacon. Bacon's probably the most rewarding, I would say. So,
Right.
yeah. If you or anyone out there wants any tips on sausage making or bacon curing, then drop me a line.
Yeah. Well, I stopped eating meat at the start of the year, so pathetic, innit? I
No
can't. I
comment.
can't do it. No, no.
No, I
I did
actually eat
have.
a lot less meat. My daughter's vegan, and she's living with us at the moment. So yeah, she's doing a lot of cooking for us, and I'm loving it. I'm eating a lot less meat, but the meat that I do eat is obviously very carefully sourced and all the rest of it. So
Yeah, that's
yeah,
that's the key thing, isn't it?
yeah.
Yeah, my family decided they were all going to be vegans around Christmas time, and it soon got knocked on the head. I mean, my second boy he said, "Can we get a pizza?
Uh,
Takeaway pizza?" I said, "Well, it's got cheese on it." Yeah, it doesn't
yeah,
matter, does it?
yeah.
It was
Although vegan is
kind of
ultra hard to do, you know. I mean,
yeah.
my
To
daughter,
go to that level straight away, you've
yeah,
got to kind of work your way down, haven't you?
yeah, my daughter's kind of backing off from that a bit, really, just back to being plain old vegetarian. But I mean, it's got a lot of health benefits for sure. It's
I've not noticed it yet.
better for the planet. That's
Yeah,
a whole other
mind you,
conversation, Paul.
all the walking I've been doing recently, and picking up the cycling again, and all this, and who
It's
knows?
got to be good, hasn't it?
Might It's got to be good, and the fresh air we're breathing in now. So
Yeah,
there's one benefit to all this at least.
yes,
But
definitely.
anyway, Phil, it's been an absolute pleasure, like I say. So thanks ever so much for taking part in the Just a Couple of Jerks podcast.
It's been a pleasure, Paul. Thank you very much for inviting me.
No worries, and hopefully we'll get to meet up soon and have another natter
Most
about
definitely.
something or other.
Yes,
Yeah.
maybe a beer.
Oh yeah, definitely. Nice one.
Cheers, Paul. Thanks very
Cheers now.
much for having me.